Welcome to day 83 of our scripture reading and daily encouragement. Today we're going to cover 1 Samuel 22 and 23. Then we're going to cover Luke 16 verses 1 through 13. As we pick up in 1 Samuel, David has been hiding from Saul. Jonathan, who is Saul's son, actually risked his own life to help David know that Saul is intending to kill him. So David goes to hide. In this specific scripture, he goes to hide in the caves of Adullam. It says, soon his brothers and relatives joined him there. Verse 2 of chapter 22, it says, then others began coming, men who were in trouble or in debt, or who were just discontented, until David was captain of about 400 men. So we see David's brothers and relatives join him there. And then we see some other people come, and it's not the type of people you normally want to be around. It says people who are in trouble, people who are in debt, people who are just generally discontented. But then I stop and think, isn't this the type of people that Jesus hung around? So we see this with David. David welcomes these people in, and God uses what I'm going to call this ragtag army of this motley crew of people to provide David 400 men. So David is a natural leader. He's a natural leader of warriors. And God has provided him some unlikely men, once again, to help David. 400 men. So I want to point out something. First, as we started this story of David, we saw David be a servant. We talked about that a few days ago. He was a servant in everything that he did, and that got him to the right places. But now we begin to see David be extremely patient. David says, until I know what God is going to do for me. So he's asking if he can hide out in this town and hide his parents there until I know what God is going to do for me. See, he's in hiding, yet he is still faithful and patient to wait on God. Think about this. If you're in hiding because someone was trying to physically kill you, wouldn't it be very difficult to be patient? Wouldn't it be very difficult not to question God? But we see David here giving us an example of even in hiding, even when his life is at risk and he doesn't know who to trust, he is still faithful and patient to wait on God. And we see that Saul has become so scared of David because he knows that the Lord is not with him anymore. He's so scared of David. He's tormented. He orders 85 priests to be killed. There's one priest that helped David. And because of that, Saul orders 85 priests to be killed. But not only the priests, their entire families, babies, children, livestock, everything be killed because one man simply fed David and gave him a sword. But one priest escapes and tells David. And then we see David go on and he attacks the Philistines to protect the city. He has victory. So we're seeing that David is leading his men. He's in hiding, but God calls him to attack the Philistines at this specific place to protect this village. Saul finds out he's there. God tells David to go hide. So even though David has amassed this army of men and he's had some success and victory, God still tells David, go hide. Your time is not yet. It says now his men had grown to 600. So think about that. David is growing in number of followers. It would be very difficult for him to stay humble, to stay patient, to stay faithful, and just say, okay, God, I'll continue to hide. But it says Saul hunted for him day after day, but God did not let Saul find him. So I think it's just, I guess, interesting to compare. We see David in the wilderness. He's going through trials. He's going to be a great man in the kingdom, so to speak. But before he's given that authority, before he's given that purpose, he is tested. His faith, his patience, his obedience is tested in the wilderness. And doesn't this look a lot like Jesus being tempted and tested in the wilderness before he's given his ministry? I think sometimes we have to realize that we are going to have to go through trials and tests before God gives us our mission or our ministry or our purpose. So many of us get frustrated because we don't know what we're supposed to do for God. And we stay in this perpetual state of doubt that we aren't good enough or that There is no purpose for our lives, but maybe it's the fact that we are not withstanding the trials and tests that God puts before us, that we have to persevere through before he unveils that purpose to us. As we flip over into Luke chapter 16, we see Jesus, and he's telling a parable of a shrewd business manager. The good news is Jesus sums up this parable for us in verse 9. He says, here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. So I want you to hear what Jesus just said there. He didn't say that worldly possessions are bad. He said, use them to benefit others. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. So I have a question for you this morning. Are you using the resources God has given you to help others? Or are you selfishly hoarding those resources to build your own kingdom or to build your own future or to build your own security? Jesus is very clear here. You're expected to use your worldly resources to benefit others. That'll mean different things to different people. For us, that means using our wedding venue, for example. I am called to use the resource God has given us. It's a worldly resource that we use to make money, but we open it up for free counseling. We open it up for people to have church here. So that's our attempt at trying to use the worldly resources that we've been given to benefit others. So I want to encourage you, there are so many things that you have that you can use to benefit others if you just look for those things. No matter how small you might think they are, they can help others, and that's what we're called to do. And Jesus goes on to say, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. See, a lot of us want the large thing. We want the big thing. We want to know the big thing God's going to do in our lives or use us for. But Jesus is clear here. You've got to be faithful in the little things before you can be trusted with the large ones. He says, if you're dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And I think of so many people I know. I want to be careful here because I'm not trying to point someone out, but I think of people who own small businesses and they cheat the government on their taxes by not claiming things that they should. And then they wonder why their small business is not blessed. Jesus is clear here. If you're dishonest in the little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. So sometimes we find ourselves wanting bigger responsibilities, but we haven't proven that we'll be faithful and honest with the smaller things first to earn the right for the bigger ones. He says, if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. So what Jesus is saying here is worldly things aren't bad, but God expects you to use the worldly things you have for the benefit of others. And he's not going to bless you with a ton of great worldly things if he can't trust you with the little worldly things. And I'm not talking about evil people that cheat, lie, steal, hurt others to gain success in worldly. We're talking about believers here. We're talking about people who know what they're supposed to be doing. The world is full of people that Satan has blessed with great things that aren't helping people. So I don't want anyone to get confused there. But I want you to look at the tie between David and Jesus' story. David proved his faithfulness by being patient, faithful, obedient while hiding. See, that was kind of the small things. Do you get the tie there? David had to prove himself in the wilderness before God would entrust him with the big thing. Jesus is telling us here that we have to be faithful in the little things. And sometimes that's worldly things before we can be given the big thing. So I've got a question for you this morning. Are you using your resources to help others? Can God trust you in the little things so that he can give you a big thing? I've said it before this morning, but many of us want the big things. but we haven't proven that we can be trustworthy in the small things. I can even look back at my life in ministry, not even worldly things, but in ministry. I wanted so much more than I was given, and I didn't understand. I thought I had so much more potential than what I was given, but God kept reminding me, Jason, you have to be faithful with the little things I give you in ministry to earn the right for the bigger things to come. So I want to encourage you this morning, and I want you to be encouraged. Be faithful in the little things. Don't be discouraged because you have little things. Be faithful in the little things. And make sure when you're tested, whether it's out in the wilderness like David, out in the wilderness like Jesus, or being tested with little things or with worldly things, that you remain faithful when tested. Hope you're encouraged today, and I hope you have a great day.